Fog presses low over the River Clyde, thick as unspooled wool, swallowing the morning light before it can touch the frozen streets. It clings to rooftops and chimney pots, slips through alleyways, drags across cobblestones like a tired animal searching for warmth. Far out in the harbor, a ship horn moans, long, deep, mournful, its echo drifting through the gray like a lost soul calling home. Inside a narrow brick house, the kitchen is dark except for the faint ember glow inside the small coal grate. Margaret Ellis stands near the window, her thin hands resting on the cold sill. Her breath fogs the glass. Her nightdress hangs loosely on her frame, fabric folding in places where once there had been softness. On the table behind her lies a ration book, edges frayed, pages worn thin from too much touching. The ink has begun to feather into the paper. Meat, fats, sugar, a tea. Stamps sit like verdicts, harsh, impersonal, absolute. Her fingers move over the page as if it were a wound. 2 ounces of butter, 3 ounces of bacon, if the butcher has any. And bread, always less, always thinner. She whispers to the silent room. How do you stretch nothing into something? A loose pane rattles in the window frame. Outside, the wind carries the bitter scent of shut-down factories, cold metal, soot, and the emptiness of work that no longer exists. The city feels starved, not only of food, but of breath, of motion, of hope. Margaret opens her diary. The page trembles beneath her hand. The children pretend they're full. Thomas says he dreams of bread, white bread, soft as clouds. I don't have the heart to tell him dreams feel rationed too. Her pen stalls. Her stomach tightens, folding in on itself like a clenched fist. Far off, a church bell tolls 6 slow times. The sound drifts through the fog, thin and hollow, like bones knocking together. Margaret closes the diary with shaking fingers. Britain is starving, and though no one says it aloud, everyone feels the same cold truth settling over the nation like the morning fog. This winter may finish what the bombs couldn't. Dawn in London arrives quietly now. No sirens, no firestorms, only a pale, watery light seeping through blackout curtains like a timid guest afraid to enter. Inside the Admiralty War Room, lamps cast yellow circles over a sea of maps pinned with red and blue flags. Britain's lifelines stretch across the Atlantic in thin threads of string, fragile veins struggling to keep a starving body alive. Winston Churchill stands before them, shoulders hunched beneath the weight of news that grows heavier each day. A report lies in his hand. Its corners are bent, smudged with fingerprints, passed from officer to officer like a death notice. He reads it again, though he already knows every word. Convoy losses exceed 700,000 tons this month. Merchant fleet insufficient to meet civilian needs. Nation approaching critical food shortage. The room is silent except for the hum of the radio and the distant clatter of typewriters. Lieutenant Rowan, young and still too honest to hide fear, clears his throat. Prime Minister, if we lose any more tankers. Churchill doesn't look up. His voice is low, almost gentle. We will lose more than tankers, lad. We will lose Britain. Across the ocean, the world looks different. In Halifax, Nova Scotia, the air smells of salt and pine, sharp enough to sting the lungs. Frost clings to crates stacked along the docks, mountains of wheat, bags of flour, barrels of bacon sealed in waxy paper. Workers move among them with stiff shoulders and red hands, breath rising in ghostly clouds. Daniel McAllister grips the edge of a crate marked, Wheat, Canada for UK. The wood is frozen, rough beneath his glove. His cheeks burn from the cold, but he doesn't stop. None of them do. A gull shrieks overhead. Somewhere down the line, a winch groans, lifting another cargo net heavy with supplies. Daniel murmurs to himself, almost as if speaking to the sea. Hold on, Britain. We're sending everything we've got. Behind him, the convoy ships wait, dark giants exhaling white plumes of steam into the icy air. Their hulls creak. Their flags whip violently in the wind. They will cross an ocean that has already swallowed too many, but they will go anyway. The North Atlantic is not a sea. It is a fist. A cold iron fist that squeezes ships until they groan like wounded animals. Night after night. Convoy SC-121 crawls across the black water in a thin, trembling line. The moon hides behind swollen clouds. The wind screams against steel hulls. Waves rise like giants, slamming down with bone-shaking force. On the SS Empire Linden, Daniel braces himself against the rail as icy spray lashes across his face. The sea tastes like metal. His fingers ache through his gloves. Men speak little now. The ocean has taken their words. Replace them with a silence heavy as grief. Then, from the crow's nest comes a broken shout. "Wake in the water!"
"Port side, U-boat wake!"
Time shatters. Sirens erupt. Searchlights snap alive, slicing the darkness. Men run, boots thundering on the trembling deck. Depth charges drop like stones into the mouth of the sea. For one heartbeat, the world holds its breath. Then the ocean explodes. White, violent, terrible. Daniel clamps his hands over his ears as the blast slams through the hull. The ship quivers. Wood splinters. A crate bursts open behind him, sending wheat spilling across the deck like pale gold blood. Somewhere in the chaos, someone shouts a prayer. Someone else curses the sea. Someone cries for his mother. Hours later, the attack fades into a bruised silence. The convoy continues, smaller now. In London, Churchill reads the telegram, face carved from stone. 4 ships sunk, 2 missing, casualties unknown. He closes his eyes. His cigar burns low. The room smells of smoke, fear, and the slow decay of hope. But a week later, battered and limping, the surviving ships push through the gray fog into Liverpool. Crowds gather along the docks. Thin women, hollow-cheeked men, children wrapped in blankets too small for the cold. When they see the crates being unloaded, wheat, flour, oats, they break into tears. Some fall to their knees. Some simply stare, unable to speak. Margaret Ellis stands among them, scarf tugged tight around her face. When she sees the first sack of Canadian flour lowered onto British soil, her breath catches. She whispers, voice trembling, "Canada saved us." The first sacks of Canadian wheat reach the bakeries within days, carried on narrow handcarts through fog-soaked streets. For months, the scent of real bread had vanished, replaced by thin, gray loaves that crumbled like damp paper. But on this morning, something miraculous floats through the air. The warm, rich smell of dough rising. People stop mid-step. Heads turn. A silence spreads through the street, followed by a ripple of disbelief. Children lift their faces like small birds sensing spring. Margaret Ellis stands outside Miller's Bakery, wrapped tightly in her coat. The queue stretches far down the block. People press close, not from impatience, but from fear the smell might vanish if they stand too far away. Frost glitters on scarves and eyebrows. Breath clouds rise and mingle, forming a thin veil over the crowd. Inside, bakers move like soldiers at the front, focused, urgent, flour dusted across their cheeks like war paint. They pull golden loaves from the oven, the crust cracking softly, releasing steam that curls into the cold air in delicate, ghostly ribbons. When Margaret steps inside, her eyes blur from the warmth. She hands over her ration book with trembling fingers. The baker nods gently and places a small half-loaf into her hands. It is warm, real warmth, not coal warmth, not kettle warmth, bread warmth. She presses it to her chest. Her throat tightens. Outside, she walks home slowly, as if carrying something sacred. Snowflakes drift down, settling on the loaf before melting into little stars. At home, her children wait at the table, eyes wide. Thomas swings his legs nervously, his knees knocking together under the chair. Margaret slices the loaf carefully, each slice measured, each crumb precious. When Thomas takes his first bite, he freezes. Then he gasps softly. "It tastes like before," he whispers. His sister nods, tears shining in her eyes. Like Sundays. Margaret cannot speak. She only watches as her children eat, slowly, reverently, as if afraid the moment will dissolve if they blink too long. In her diary that night she writes, "Hope smells like bread, and today hope came from Canada." In Halifax, the cold bites hard, sharper than any blade. The docks are a forest of masts and cranes, rising through the morning mist like the ribs of sleeping giants. On this particular dawn, Daniel McAllister stands with a mug of weak coffee warming his gloves, his breath drifting upward in pale ghosts. A letter from his cousin in Toronto sits folded in his pocket. He takes it out again, though he's already memorized every line. "They say the British are on their last legs. Do you think your work makes a difference, Dan?" He looks at the towering stacks of crates beside him, bags of flour, barrels of salted pork, tins of evaporated milk, whole mountains of food, enough to feed cities, enough to keep a nation breathing. He folds the letter back into his pocket. "Aye," he murmurs. "It makes a difference." A train whistle shrieks across the harbor. Workers move like a choreographed wave, unloading, checking manifests, heaving supplies into cargo nets. The air smells of pine oil, rope, and the faint sweetness of stored grain. Nearby, a young sailor drops his glove. Daniel bends, picks it up, hands it to him. The boy's face is pink from the cold, but his eyes hold something deeper, fear. "Sir, do you think we'll make it across?" Daniel holds his gaze for a long moment. Behind them, the convoy ships loom, black silhouettes waiting to face a sea full of unseen teeth. "We'll make it," Daniel says softly. "Because they need us." The boy nods, not convinced, but comforted. Hours later, crates thud onto wooden planks as the last cargo net swings aboard the freighter. The captain stands at the gangway, coat billowing in the wind, watching his crew with a solemn pride. He knows the risk. They all do, but duty tastes stronger than fear. As the ship prepares to depart, Daniel steps back, hands in his pockets, watching the giant vessel shudder to life. Smoke curls from its funnels. The ropes are loosed. The hull groans. He whispers to the wind, "Carry them safe." Britain's counting on every last loaf. The ship slides away, disappearing slowly into the gray Atlantic mist. A fragile promise sailing toward a starving island. By the spring of 1943, Britain is a land of shadows, long queues, thin faces, quiet suffering. Yet for the first time in months, the fog of despair feels slightly less heavy. Canadian convoys arrive with cautious regularity, each one a fragile miracle. Margaret Ellis keeps every scrap of foreign. Packaging, brown paper stamped Canada, twine that once tied sacks of flour, the small red maple leaf symbol printed on the side of a tinned milk crate she found discarded near the grocer's. She tucks them into a kitchen drawer like talismans. But hope is a strange visitor. It comes softly, almost shyly, and always carries a shadow behind it. One morning, Margaret receives a letter from her sister in Manchester. The envelope is thin, soft from too many hands. She opens it at the table, steam from the kettle rising like ghosts around her. Her sister writes, "We counted the potatoes twice yesterday, just to be certain. The baby cries from hunger at night. I boil water and tell her it's broth." Margaret's hands begin to shake. Rumors say more ships were lost last week. People whisper about another cut to the rations. We pretend not to hear. The words pierce her like cold rain. She folds the letter slowly and places it beside the bread tin. A single slice of yesterday's loaf remains, soft, precious, impossible to stretch further. She runs her fingers over its crust, guilt blooming inside her like a bruise. How do you eat when your own sister starves? That night, after the children sleep, she writes in her diary, "Every crumb feels like a betrayal. I pray more ships come. I pray Canada has more to give." Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Daniel receives a newspaper clipping from a friend in London, photos of British families lining up for food, their clothes hanging loosely on their bodies, their expressions a mixture of hope and exhaustion. Daniel studies the faces, ordinary people, strangers who look like neighbors he's never met. He feels something tighten in his throat. "We need to send more," he mutters. Outside, the wind howls against the window. Inside, a single lamp burns low. Two worlds. One hunger, one lifeline between them.